Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. Jack had always believed that Genoa City had seen every kind of secret, every kind of betrayal, every kind of lie a person could invent to save themselves. But when he and Diane sat together in the Abbott living room, staring at the folder Claire had left behind by accident, the truth hit them harder than anything else had in months. Claire Grace, the young woman who had wormed her way into their family's trust, was not carrying the miracle child she claimed. Diane's hands shook as she flipped through the papers, ultrasound photos that didn't line up with the dates, medical records that seemed altered, and a doctor's signature that didn't belong to anyone practicing in Genoa City. Jack could feel his heart pounding in his chest, his jaw tightening with a mix of anger and sorrow. He thought about Kyle, about Harrison, about the way Claire had been slowly becoming part of their family's orbit. If this pregnancy was fake, what else was she hiding? And worse, why? Diane looked up at Jack, her eyes wide, almost haunted. She had fought so hard to earn her place back in the Abbott household, to convince Jack and Kyle that she had changed, that she wasn't the schemer who once manipulated her way through every opportunity. But seeing Claire's lies spread out before her made old wounds ache. Diane whispered, almost to herself, "Why fake being pregnant? Why put yourself through this charade?" The weight of her question filled the room like heavy smoke, suffocating them both. Jack didn't answer right away. He paced instead, rubbing the back of his neck, trying to think like a man who had dealt with countless liars. Was Claire doing this to keep someone close? To trap a man? To make herself indispensable in the Abbott family? Or was it something darker, something rooted in the twisted Newman drama she came from? The silence was unbearable. Diane kept replaying Claire's words in her head, the way she had announced her pregnancy with trembling hands and watery eyes, painting herself as vulnerable, as a woman desperate for acceptance. Diane had even defended her, urging Jack to show compassion, reminding him that Claire hadn't had an easy life. She thought back to those tender moments when Claire touched her stomach, smiling softly as though she were already connected to a life inside her. But now, Diane wondered if those moments were nothing more than theater. She hugged herself tightly, shaking her head in disbelief. Jack, if this is true, then she's been manipulating all of us. She's been manipulating Kyle. And Harrison, God, what if she was planning to use this baby to get closer to him? Jack froze mid-step at the mention of his grandson. The thought of Harrison, so innocent and trusting, being pulled into yet another adult's web of lies made Jack's blood boil. He had promised himself long ago that he would protect that boy from every storm Genoa City could throw at him. And now Claire, who had seemed like she wanted to start fresh after her time with Jordan, had turned around and built a house of cards that could come crashing down on all of them. Jack's voice was low but filled with restrained fury when he finally spoke. If she thought she could fool this family with a fake pregnancy, then she underestimated us. And she underestimated me. Diane bit her lip. She knew Jack well enough to recognize the storm brewing inside him. When Jack Abbott felt betrayed, when he believed someone had targeted his family, he didn't let it slide. She remembered the countless battles he had fought with Victor, with Tucker, with anyone who dared try to dismantle the Abbott legacy. But something about Claire's deception felt more personal. Perhaps it was because they had all allowed themselves to care. Perhaps it was because, deep down, they had hoped Claire's desire to belong was real. Diane reached out, resting a hand on Jack's arm. We can't go off half-cocked. We need to be careful. If we confront her without proof, she'll twist this around. She'll make us look paranoid, and Kyle will side with her. We can't lose him again. Jack exhaled sharply, trying to control his temper. Diane was right. Evidence mattered, especially with someone like Claire, who had already shown she was capable of manipulating hearts and minds. He remembered how quickly she had won Kyle over, how she had managed to insert herself into his son's confidence, planting seeds of trust and loyalty. Jack could almost see the ripple effect of this revelation, how Kyle would react if he discovered that the woman he thought was carrying his child had been lying from the very beginning. Jack's heart ached at the thought of his son's pain, of Harrison's confusion. But beneath the sorrow, there was determination. If Claire thought her secret would stay buried, she had another thing coming. Diane's eyes softened as she watched Jack. She had been through her own share of lies and fake stories, her own supposed death, the schemes she pulled to keep herself afloat. That was why Claire's actions cut so deeply. Diane knew the damage a fake story could do to a family. She knew the shattering effect of trust broken beyond repair. And she wondered, not for the first time, if her own history was why Jack looked at her with both suspicion and disappointment now. Did he wonder if Diane had been blind because she wanted so badly to see Claire as a reflection of herself, a woman desperate for a second chance? Diane swallowed hard, forcing the guilt away, because now wasn't the time for self-pity. We need to understand her motive, she said carefully. If we know why she's faking, then we'll know what she's after. Jack nodded reluctantly. Diane had a point. People didn't invent pregnancies for no reason, it was always about control, leverage, or survival. Jack sat down heavily on the couch, the folder of falsified documents still lying on the coffee table like a loaded weapon. He tapped his fingers against his knee, thinking back over Claire's recent actions. She had been clingy, yes, but also determined. She had shown up at odd times, inserting herself into family moments, offering help no one had asked for. Jack replayed all of it, and for the first time, every kindness Claire had shown looked like a calculated move. His chest tightened with frustration. She's not just after Kyle, he muttered. This is about the Abbotts. About getting a foothold in this family. And she thinks a baby, real or not, is her ticket. Diane shivered at the thought. She remembered the nights she lay awake, terrified that someone would use Harrison as a pawn in their endless battles with Victor or Tucker. The thought that Claire had been building an entire lie with the same goal in mind made her sick. Diane leaned forward, lowering her voice as though Claire might somehow hear them from down the hall. If she wants to use this family's name, this family's love, then we have to stop her before it goes any further. Before Kyle makes decisions he can't take back. Jack's eyes darkened. He thought of Kyle, how easily his son's heart broke when trust was shattered. Tara Locke had once played him like a fiddle, using Harrison as leverage, dangling the promise of a family before tearing it all away. Now history was repeating itself, only worse, because this time Kyle believed he had gotten ahead of the game. He believed he had chosen Claire, believed her honesty set her apart from the rest. Jack clenched his fists, fury coursing through him at the idea of his son falling for another carefully spun lie. The revelation that Claire Grace has fabricated a pregnancy on the young and the restless is not merely a shocking plot twist designed to spike weekly ratings, it is a meticulously crafted narrative device that serves as a profound exploration of character psychology, intergenerational trauma, and the desperate, often destructive, lengths to which individuals will go to secure a sense of belonging. The discovery of this deception by Jack and Diane Jenkins is the critical catalyst that forces a confrontation not only with Claire's fractured psyche but with the very nature of family, forgiveness, and identity within the powerful, yet deeply wounded, Abbott clan. This act of fabrication is a scream into the void, a misguided and tragic attempt to create a tether to a world that has systematically rejected her, and its uncovering forces every character involved to question their own morality, their capacity for compassion, and the shadows cast by their own pasts. To understand the why behind Claire's deception, one must first journey into the profound emptiness of her history. She is a product of immense trauma, a woman whose entire life was built upon a foundation of lies orchestrated by her great-aunt, Jordan. She was raised not with love, but with a poisonous narrative of abandonment and revenge, taught that the Newman and Abbott families were monstrous entities who had cast her aside. Her initial actions upon arriving in Genoa City, the kidnapping of Nikki Newman, were born from this warped indoctrination. However, her subsequent exposure to the warmth, however complicated, of the Abbott family, and particularly the unexpected empathy from her biological mother, Summer, and her grandfather, Victor Newman, began to dismantle this lifelong programming. She was offered a glimpse of acceptance, a tentative hand extended from the very people she was taught to hate. This created a powerful cognitive dissonance within her. The ingrained need for revenge battled against a newly awakened, desperate yearning for the familial connection she had never known. The pregnancy lie, therefore, emerges not from a place of pure malice, but from a place of catastrophic insecurity. Having been granted a conditional, probationary place at the periphery of this powerful dynasty, Claire is terrified of losing it. She is the ultimate outsider, a constant reminder of a painful chapter in the family's history. She knows her position is precarious, dependent on the continued goodwill of people who are still grappling with the shock of her existence and the terror of her initial actions. In the economy of a wealthy, established family like the Abbotts or the Newmans, legacy is currency. Children are the ultimate symbol of that legacy, the biological and emotional continuation of a name and a fortune. Claire, possessing the bloodline but none of the shared history or unconditional love, is bankrupt in this economy. By fabricating a pregnancy, she instantly acquires a new, unassailable value. She is no longer just the woman who kidnapped Nikki, she becomes the vessel for the next generation, a mother, a figure who commands protection, concern, and a permanent stake in the family's future. It is a horrifically misguided shortcut to permanence, a way to force the family to see her not for her tragic, violent past, but for a potential, hopeful future she has invented. The choice of a pregnancy is particularly poignant and psychologically revealing. For a woman whose own mother was coerced into giving her up, a primal wound that defines her existence, to claim the state of motherhood herself is an attempt to reclaim control over that narrative. It is an unconscious effort to reverse the roles, to transform from the abandoned child into the life-giving mother, thereby healing her own wound through a fictional act of creation. Furthermore, in the context of her relationship with Kyle Abbott, the lie becomes even more complex. While not necessarily a calculated move to ensnare him romantically, it does create an irrevocable biological and emotional bond between them, a bond she fears could never form organically given their complicated history. It forces him to see her in a new light and guarantees his involvement in her life for a minimum of 18 years, a stability she has never known. The discovery of this lie by Jack and Diane is the moment the meticulously constructed house of cards collapses, and it is a moment rich with dramatic irony and moral complexity. Jack Abbott, the patriarch, is a man deeply familiar with redemption. His own life has been a series of missteps, addictions, and moral failings, yet he has consistently been granted forgiveness and a chance to rebuild. He embodies the Abbott family's stated ethos of second chances and unconditional support for family. When he and Diane uncover the truth, it is not just a shocking fact they discover, it is a direct test of Jack's core philosophy. Is his belief in forgiveness and family unconditional, or does it have limits when confronted with a deception of this magnitude, perpetrated by a relative who is still essentially a stranger? His reaction becomes a barometer for Claire's true chances of assimilation. Diane Jenkins, on the other hand, provides a fascinating counterpoint. A master of reinvention and survival herself, Diane has been both the perpetrator and victim of devastating lies throughout her life in Genoa City. She understands better than anyone the desperate measures one might take to secure a position, protect a child, or simply survive in the high-stakes world of the Genoa City elite. Her perspective is therefore less likely to be one of pure, unadulterated outrage and more one of complex, perhaps even reluctant, understanding. She can see the tragic blueprint of the lie because she has followed similar ones herself. However, as a mother fiercely protective of her son, Kyle, her primary concern will be the emotional shrapnel inflicted upon him by this deception. She is poised perfectly between empathy and maternal fury, making her role in the aftermath crucial. Will she see a reflection of her own past desperation in Claire, or will she see only a threat to her son's well-being? The impact of this discovery ripples outwards, affecting every character in its orbit. For Kyle, the revelation is a profound violation. He was beginning to navigate a fragile, newfound connection with a sister he never knew he had, only to be drawn into an elaborate fiction that involved his own fictional child. The emotional whiplash, from potential uncle and protector to the victim of an audacious fraud, will trigger deep trust issues and likely a rage that mirrors the initial betrayal he felt when Harrison's paternity was lied about by Tara. It forces him to question his own judgment and his capacity to trust anyone ever again. For Summer, Claire's biological mother, the revelation is a multifaceted tragedy. It is a stark reminder that the daughter she was forced to give up is deeply damaged, her psyche fractured by a lifetime without maternal love. Summer's guilt, already a powerful force, will be magnified exponentially. She may wonder if this desperate act is a direct result of her own absence, a cry for the motherhood that was stolen from both of them. Her reaction will be a painful tug-of-war between a mother's protective instinct and the horror of the lie itself. On a broader scale, the exposure of the fake pregnancy serves as a crucible for the entire Abbott family. It forces them to move beyond the theoretical concept of accepting Claire and confront the gritty, unpleasant reality of what integrating a profoundly traumatized individual truly entails. It is easy to offer forgiveness for past misdeeds done under the influence of a manipulator like Jordan. It is far more difficult to navigate a present-tense, active, and deeply personal deception that threatens the family's emotional stability. The family must now decide if their commitment to blood is stronger than their revulsion at the lie. Will they circle the wagons and view Claire as a sick individual in need of intensive help and compassion, or will they exile her, proving her deepest fear, that her belonging was always conditional and fragile, to be true? Furthermore, the storyline powerfully deconstructs the trope of the soap opera pregnancy lie. While a common plot device, in Claire's case, it is stripped of any glamour or cunning strategy. It is not the act of a villainess seeking to trap a man or steal a fortune, though those elements may peripherally exist. Instead, it is painted as a symptom of profound mental and emotional distress. The narrative pushes the audience to view her not as a schemer, but as a desperately unwell individual whose grasp on reality and morality has been by a lifetime of abuse and isolation. This reframes the entire conversation from one of how could she do this, to what brought her to this point. It challenges the very definitions of villainy and victimhood, presenting a character who is both simultaneously. In the end, the discovery of Claire's fake pregnancy by Jack and Diane is far more than a simple spoiler. It is the narrative key that unlocks the next, most difficult chapter of her integration. The initial forgiveness for her kidnapping plot was, in hindsight, the easy part. It was forgiveness for a crime committed by the person Jordan created. This new deception, however, is committed by the Claire who has tasted acceptance and is terrified of its loss. It is a test of the Abbott family's character, a measure of their stated values against a shocking and repugnant reality. For Claire, the aftermath of this exposure could go one of two ways. It could confirm her deepest fears of abandonment, finally shattering her already fragile psyche and setting her on a path of irreversible villainy, or it could, paradoxically, become the foundation of her true redemption. If the family, led by the morally conflicted but fundamentally decent Jack and the shrewdly empathetic Diane, can see past the lie to the brokenness that caused it, they can finally begin to offer the unconditional support she needs to truly heal. They can show her that her value is not in what she can provide, a heir, a legacy, but in who she is, a survivor, a blood relative, and a human being worthy of love despite her devastating mistakes. The fake pregnancy, therefore, is not the end of her story, but the painful, necessary beginning of the real work of making a family.